Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. I'm still getting used to the system, so I'm still like trying to figure out who is in the sessions. Oh, there's actually a lot of people, more than I imagined. Um, I will maybe getting started. But before I get started, I wanted to make sure the session today is gonna be helpful and kind of interactive with you guys. So feel free to leave comments in the comment section. And because I'm a product person, so sometimes I want to focus on the science behind how can the information I know be helpful to people. Just in case I get too hyper about the product and you feel like this is not being too helpful, please leave comment in the sessions so I will see it and I will try to turn my topic into things that are more helpful for everyone. So let's get started. I will share my screen. And in the meanwhile, I'm actually very curious. I'm seeing people saying hi. And I would love to know, like by just reading on the title today, what is something that you wanted to find out? What can be something that's helpful for you in this session? What kind of things that you want to know? And please take your time writing. And I have the chat on the side, so that hopeful that I can like have a better understanding about what people react, find things that are helpful. Yes, I'm seeing people from Vancouver, seeing some familiar names. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. And don't forget to leave some comments about what you wanted to find out from the session, and I can also adjust the information I will be sharing in the session accordingly. And just to give you guys a quick overview about the session, I will be sharing the science behind how to make sure that you can live a motivative and productive life through emotional well-being. And I'll also be talking a little bit about the startup that I'm currently working on, which is leveraging AI for well-being, so that I can share a bit more about what kind of AI tools and how to leverage AI to boost your motivation and emotional well-being. Yes, sounds good. I'm seeing some answers already. Get rid of procrastination. Good. I'm gonna talk about that for sure because I had procrastination issues a lot of times. Okay, let's get started now. So in this session, and before I even get started, I wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Tierney. You can also call me T. I'm also a mentor on the ADP list. I actually had over 100 sessions with different level of designers because my overall background is actually product design. And definitely through a lot of the sessions, I realized that the main issue for a lot of people, like especially for people who are like trying to find new jobs or who's like doing their like trying to get better at their works, are like the one of the main thing is actually they tend to get overwhelmed by the negative feedback they got from the job market, and also get overwhelmed by building their first portfolios. And I realized that a lot of the time the issue is not their skills, and also it's not about what they're doing and how they're doing, is really about managing their emotional well-being through this challenging process of having breakthrough in their career or finding breaking into new career, new things. And I wanted to make sure that the knowledge I'm sharing today, hopefully it will be helpful to make people feel more motivated to work on the portfolio, or happen maybe help people to get some helpful tools to improve their procrastinations. So my overall journey is actually a little bit over different places, because I have both worked in startup companies and also larger companies. But through my career, working in startups and also working in Google, I've been very focused on how do we connect modern technologies, such as AI, with users through design thinking. How do we make it easier to access? And interestingly, my previous work is all like high tech looking, very like industry looking, cool things. This is one of the work I had when I was at C3AI, and also I was at Jigsaw. I also worked on the machine learning for content moderation, which is also like this kind of like really cool looking high tech thingy. However, my current job, like the current startup I'm actually working on, had a huge shift in style, which now is looking warm and cute. This is actually kind of like different for a lot of people in their career, where it's just like from B2B to B2C, from like cool looking, high tech looking into something cute and fun. A lot of people actually ask me like, why did you choose to work on mental health? It actually started with my personal story. So when I was 16, I was the person who looks very happy. You might not notice, but actually in this picture, the one on the left, I was actually wearing a wig. That was because that was the first time I experienced depression. And when I got depression, the symptom get so severe, I started to lose my hair. And at one point, I just almost lost all of my hair, which was a weird and rare symptom, but it did happen. So on the picture on the right is when I started to have my hair grow back. So I got rid of the wig and I started to have some really short hair. And at that time, I noticed that actually, when people are having depression, it's not as easy as just feeling sad all the time or wanted to suicide or things like that. The most um, challenging thing for me at the time was I lost interest and motivation to a lot of things I used to enjoy. And after I recovered, things are like still sometimes has ups and downs, but I started to pay more attention to motivation, and I realized how much mental health can actually impact and sometimes paralyze people's ability to take actions. So that's why I just got so interested in like, okay, how do we think about mental health in our daily life and how do we improve it? So that's why I got here. And the interesting thing is, I'm not the only one. If you look into the recent news, you will notice that the whole society is in this mental health crisis. Kids' mental health are facing challenges. A lot of the parents have told us like they're so concerned about their children. The young people are having a lot of challenges. Mental health crises are wired like in college, and not only happening in college but also people who have been experiencing layoff or even witnessed the layoff has been experiencing a lot of survival guilt or anxiety and feeling lost in their career. And it's just in general you feel like people the whole society is actually not doing so well. And what's even more like, I wouldn't use the word interesting, but something that um got my attention is actually, if you think about mental health, like some people use this kind of metaphor. It's like, oh, mental health is another kind of illness. It feels like you got a cold, so you want to have treatment and you get better. But for most of the mental health, at least from my personal experience, is not true, because mental health, the fine line of whether if you're experiencing mental health issue is truly vague. Only small percent of people who are in the red zone, which are the people who need really strong treatment, taking medication, going to the therapist really regularly, and also very rare people, like small percentage people, are truly having a flourishing life and having like really happy, motivated life. Most of the people in our current society, it's actually in this yellow zone, who are experiencing daily stressors, sadness, sense of isolation or loneliness. However, like if you don't have a good if you don't take care of yourself at that specific moment, we might had the chance of slipping into the red zone. So this is why like we started to gain more awareness to the concept of mental well-being instead of just saying something like mental health. And that's actually true for me in my personal experience. The reason I got depression was actually because I was in this yellow zone for too long and without feeling any like moment of joy, and I slipped into the right zone, and depressed feeling becomes actual depression, and it becomes so much harder to get better. So um, I want to talk a little bit about the science. And because I want to talk about science, I have to mention my co-founder, Julie and Xuan. They are both experts in behavior science. Xuan, who is also currently the CEO of my startup, my co-founder, she is an expert in mental health and also community human-robot interactions. And Julie, who recently just graduated from Stanford with her PhD, is an expert actually in motivation science and affective science. Both of their I learned so much from their research, and it also even changed my understanding to mental health, because previously, my understanding to mental health is like, oh, depression, like how to not get depression, how to get out of depression. But after I started to have a better understanding and overview of mental health, I realized that there's actually another aspect of mental well-being, which is your day-to-day well-being. And that's also part of the domain that my co-founders know so well, and it's called positive psychology. So, with the things I just covered, what we believe or what we learned from so many like research paper and years of study is that in the modern society, we used to believe in this kind of like reactive treatment. However, it's often too late or too little. It's like when you finally feel like I can't put my life together, I need to see a therapist, I need treatment. That's usually like too late to and it becomes much harder for people to recover, and also seeing therapists, getting medication, it's very expensive. And also at that stage, you will need much more, like you will need people with so much more like expertise. Like I wouldn't trust AI even in nowadays to treat severe mental illness. So this becomes less scalable because of the lack of expert in the market. So what we really believe in is we think that the modern mental health has a chance to become more proactive, which is has prevention and make the information more educational. It's just making it sounds like we wanted to make sure people understand mental well-being as easy as just like how people think about you can practice your muscle by working out. You can also do that for your mind. You can take practice and work out your mind to be a much happier, much motivated people. And also within, because the daily well-being, it's much more affordable and easier to treat. Therefore, we believe that the system can be much more scalable for a lot of individuals as well. So I feel like this can be a little too vague for a lot of people. Like, what do you actually mean? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual use case. So give me 1 second. I want to find an actual use case from the chat. So let's say, procrastination. Like, how do we increase productivity? So let's use this kind of thing, like productivity. Imagine like you had this one day where you have this entire day, and then you started to plan your day and say like, okay, so I need to get started on my portfolio. I want to correct my resume. I also have those projects that I need to clean up. Oh gosh, like I also need to like figure out my relationship issue with this friend. Yeah, shout out to yeah, this is a really cool tool. Anyway, I have like so much to do things, and then like you feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much thing to do. It's very difficult to complete within just one day, and you started to sense this kind of like resistant to your to-do list. So instead of like starting from like 10 a.m. in the morning after your first cup of tea, which is when your mind are most clear, you turned into some kind of like distractions. Like you went to the fridge, grab the food first, and then you were like, oh, I wonder like what is in TikTok. So let me do some scrolling. And after 2 hours, it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything. Maybe I can just do like another 30 minutes and I will get back to work. And you end up spending this whole day feeling like you're not getting too much things done. Um, I don't know how much of you guys has experienced this. I definitely had a lot of those moments. Um, and the interesting thing is, sometimes people feel like, oh gosh, like I'm such a lazy person. Like, oh, why can't I do this? Why am I doing this? Like, this is so bad. Like, I wasted my day. But what I really wanted to share today is sometimes it's actually not your laziness. It's actually maybe not even your fault. This is because your amygdala, which is this small almond-shaped thingy in the middle of your brain, is shouting and making you believe that you're in danger. And because this kind of sense of fight, flight, freeze, and fall reaction, it's so strong that your emotion gets really overwhelming. And it makes you want it to find other kind of stimulation to help you find some kind of like distractions, like such as watching cute cat video, like ease your anxieties, or doing something else so that you can forget about all the stress and all the things they have to do. So you wanted to run away from the things that you wanted to do. However, the good news is, if you trigger your amygdala, you might be experiencing this kind of like your brain making you believe that you're in danger. So try not avoid yourself looking at it, do something else so that you can feel better. But if you actually trigger a different part of your brain, which is your prefrontal cortex, you might have a different kind of reaction, which is like, oh, I have so much things. I might not be able to finish all of them, but at least let me get started with the most important thing, and I will get started and work on things. So, so this is what we learned, and I think my scientist friend might talk about this in a so much better way. Like this is my understanding. I'm hoping this is making it easy to understand for you guys. But this is what might be happening in your brain. So the easy part is now you just have to make sure that whenever you're working on those overwhelming thingy or working with stressful situation, instead of triggering your amygdala, you just need to trigger your prefrontal cortex. And that's actually the hard part. And that's also what we so-called, my scientist friend will say, like, this is the last mile problem of science. There's actually a lot of studies talking about how you might be able to train your brain to better react to situation like this, and also what kind of actions and practice that you can do to make yourself feel better and more motivated. However, it's buried in hundreds of research papers. Um, I feel like maybe only very little people will be the one who is like, okay, now I know about this. I'm gonna read through 50 research papers so that I can know everything about how to live a more motivated life and how to train my brain. Most of people, like they might know this is good, or this might be helpful, but they struggle to find the right information, especially at the right time. So now you know why. The question is how. We actually, so when we founded the company, the Flourish, we had this huge dream. It's like, okay, we're gonna make the mental well-being practice so much more scalable, and we actually had a few very ironic failures, which I will talk a little bit very soon. And surprisingly, AI is the way that we find out that's actually very helpful for people and that actually worked. And this is so the story actually started with when we first built our MVP, and how did we slowly iterate to the current version of our app. So if you look at this first version on the left, the by the way, this character, this little son, is called Sunny, and you notice the V1 of Sunny looks kind of retarded and looks much older, and the whole app itself looks kind of like lo-fi. At that time, we were like, okay, we have all of those actions can help people to practice their brain and make people feel happier. It's validated by science. A lot of people told us this is helpful. It opens their new way of living. We can just tell people every day you do one thing and that's it. However, we're not the only one who thought about that. We actually, if you look into the Apple Store, you will notice that there's thousands of well-being apps that are trying to use very different ways for people to take those actions. And unfortunately, if you look into the data, the retention rate for those apps are less than 2% within 30 days. A lot of people actually like they download the app. It means that they have the need, they wanted to feel better, they want to be better, and they lost the motivation or they just forgot about the product because that's not the priority of their life, and that's also not helpful for them at very specific moment. Like for example, we have this really wonderful activity which a lot of people told us is so helpful. It's called Three Good Things. Like write three things that you feel happy today, and they help people to realize small things in their daily life. But imagine this day where you just had a huge fight and you're experiencing a lot of really terrible things. At the end of the day, you feel exhausted and you feel no one understood you. And you open this app, it looks extremely happy and cheerful and say like, hey, let's do three good things. What is the three things that happened to you today that made you happy? And then people will be like, this app is not for me. Like, I don't think you understand me. I don't have any good things that happened. Bye. So you will notice that it's not gonna work. So that's why we later shifted to a more like kind of like reactive like design to people. The sunny over here, like when people are having a good mood, it will look very happy along with people. But if people are having a bad day, the sunny here will look much more empathetic and holding a heart, saying like, I'm here to support you. And later on, instead of just forcing people to take actions that they might find is not relative, we started to allow people to actually talk with the app, knowing more about what's going on in their life in order to provide them the information, the knowledge, and then also actions that people can take. And that started, we started to witness how our retention rate started to get better, and also um, the general like people's review becomes so much more helpful. And so right now, I'm happy to share we have very little user, by the way, but our retention within 1 month is currently 80%, comparing with 2%. And you will notice how magical it is once you started to understand people's own problem and solve their problem, instead of forcing people to understand, like to do things that we want them to do. um yeah, so I'm gonna quickly pause it here. Do you feel like I'm talking too much about the product? Do you prefer to talk more about science, or do you feel like this is just right? Please leave in the comment. I will like look at it to make sure I can adjust accordingly. Thank you. Okay. So, things that we learned from these lessons. Actually, unfortunately, we're kind of slow. It take us like a bit more than a year to iterate 6 or 5 different versions to get to where we are today. But fortunately, we finally had our aha moment and we realized what can be helpful for people. So things that we actually learned from this is, without AI, the things that we want people to learn becomes not relevant to people's actual stressor or the moment when they need the information the most. And there's also lack of compassion, which becomes almost like, here, let me teach you, you should do this. Like, and it becomes this kind of like old dad feeling where it's not so helpful. And then also is lack of motivation that we can provide to people. Oftentimes in the very early stage, what we heard from users is like, I love your app. This was helpful for a week. Later on, I just don't know why I forgot about your product, and I just lost my motivation because I feel like I've learned it all. I will think about it, but I don't know why I want to take those actions. And with AI, the powerful thing is because you get much more personalized response, and you can engineer the language through anthropomorphism to make it feels more empathetic, to help people understand the product, to understand people's situation much better, to make sure people feel like they were being heard and being understood. Therefore, they will have more motivation. They feel more motivated to actually take actions that can eventually benefit people's life. So this is the power of AI. It's like making sure whenever you're being bothered, making sure you find the right resource with the right time, and therefore it will generate motivation for people to actually feel better. And so again, I think this is still kind of like vague concept of principles or concept. And I want to talk a little bit about how we leverage this learning and convert it into something very actionable. Um, it doesn't have to be within the app. I'm just using the product itself as an example. But what we caught is this kind of like 1, 2, 3 steps to help you take your emotions from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex, which is a very easy practice that people can also do with yourself or with any product, and it's very helpful. First, we want to make sure you're recognizing your emotions, understanding the complication of your emotions. Second is understanding. First, you want to realize how you're feeling. Second is you wanted to have a better understanding of your emotions. And third is to take actions to turn your situation around. So very typical story. The reason I'm sitting here is because I was actually encouraged by the founder of ADP List, Felix. I had a very inspiring conversation with him, and he told me that I should be sharing a bit more about what I learned and my product through this event because he find some information I shared was very helpful. And however, I've been procrastinating on finishing the application. And I dived into my feelings like, why don't I finish this? This is so easy and so quick. And I realized that the reason that I don't want to, so I actually had a conversation with the character within the app. And through that conversation, I realized that the reason I don't want to complete that like application is because I don't want to write the description for the session. I don't know what to write, and I feel like I can't write it well. And then once I understand that, I was like, okay, now I just need to figure out the easy way to just write that description so I can keep on and finish this task. Um, and then not using the product I built, I went to ChatGPT. I was like, here's the title of the event. Could you help me to write a few paragraphs to say how do I describe it? And ChatGPT get me started. Once I reviewed the description, it was very poorly done, didn't convince the idea that I want to share. I was like, you're wrong. Let me tell you what's right. And I actually wrote the whole thing like uh, a new like paragraph on my own and ask the ChatGPT to help me refine it. And that's how I actually completed that application. So I realized that a lot of time when we're experiencing procrastination or if we're trying to avoid certain things is because there might be hidden barriers. I think a lot of UX designers also know this. Like there might be certain things that are harder to do and made completing certain tasks much harder than a lot of people. So within the product or within this kind of like practice is you want to first understand the complication of your emotion. Like, for example, if you're having a bad day, why are you having a bad day? Are you feeling overwhelmed or are you feeling bored? Are you just feeling sad or are you angry? Like trying to understand the reason, then dive into what made you feel that way. It's the number one step to help you better understand yourself. And by understanding yourself, it's actually helpful for people to get started on what can you do to turn things around. Number two is this kind of like understand yourself. Sometimes it's going to be very hard to do it yourself because when we're feeling bad, we're in this negative loop and we just keep thinking about, oh, I don't like, for example, when I was looking for jobs, eventually I actually got into Google, so I'm not that bad. But when I was doing my interview and applying for jobs, I got very little return. So I was like, oh, I'm such a bad designer. I must be doing something totally wrong. So I don't have like positive feedback. I'm so stressful. And then the other day I got sick and I was like, oh my gosh, like my life is over. But then if you actually find a different perspective, other than your own negative loop, you might realize that things is not that bad. Like for example, in this situation, um, I told the character that we designed, like saying like I'm sick, but I have so much to do. And Sunny actually told me that, oh, you might want to think about self-compassion because when we're ill, our body do needs recovery, but we might unfairly judging us saying like you need to do more things, and that's when you're feeling stressed. So maybe rest first, and then once you're better, get the work. And then also some other times, like if you like by the way, you can also talk to your friend. Friends might be even better than AI, but just in case if you don't have AI to help, you don't have like friends that give you instant access, you can also talk with AI. Sometimes it can be very helpful. It's like saying like, oh, I need to do this, but this happened, I can't do this. Sometimes you'll get some really helpful ideas. Previously, like I know a lot of people mention like, oh, I need to get started on my portfolio and things like that. Sometimes like you can't get started. It's not because you're lazy, it's because you don't know where to start. So maybe in this case, it's teaching, like Sunny is teaching people that maybe you can break your task into smaller things so it's easier to get started and it's easier to complete. And then you can also break things into 25 minutes. If you think that spending a whole day to work on something sounds very challenging, think about maybe you can just do it for 25 minutes or even 15 minutes. And a lot of situation that I personally experience and my co-founders experience is like I sit here, I don't want to get started, and I told myself if I just do this for 15 minutes, I will be done for the day and I can do whatever I want. So I started, I worked for something for 15 minutes, and I realized like why I notice it's been 3 hours. So sometimes like you just need that gentle nudge to get started. Maybe it's hard for yourself to get started, but once you get some professional insight or third person's opinion or second person's opinion, you might got that gentle nudge that get you started, and then you have the motivation to start on things. And step three, oh, I sort of like went through step three, which is taking actions. But over here is like you get insight and then you take actions. Step three is to take actions, because taking actions can actually is okay. So from what I learned, action is the way to change things around. Um, the reason I'm saying this is because you can read 1,000 books and about how to live a happy life and still feel like you're not a happy person. But when you take actions, something magical might happen. It might turns your day around. For example, when I experienced my depression, one of the symptoms I had is I cannot get up from my bed. And even if I get up, like I have very low energy doing anything. And ever since I started to work on Flourish, I learned there's a action called nature walk. It's just stepping outside for a few minutes, maybe sniff the flower outside, look at the trees, just to do very, very little things outside might help you to get better. So when I have a little bit of energy, I will force myself to step outside. And that actually, the magical thing is, once you step outside, you might feel slightly better than when you're laying on your bed. And then because you're slightly better, you got slightly more energy. And instead of going back and lay down, you might put your bed together. And then you started to pour yourself a cup of water. And then once you drink the water, you feel slightly better. And you got into this positive loop, and you actually break your negative emotion pattern. And that's when things will get better and better and better. And that's like how when I had my least motivation, which is I can't even pour water for myself, that's how I personally get better. Is remember, like, even it's tiny tiny thing that you can do, you still, if you take the action, you will feel better. um and I'm not just the only one who says that. Because I have scientists as my co-founders, so we did validate a lot of things. So we actually collaborated with a few schools, and we ran a few studies with them, and we did find delightful result, which is with the we. So basically, we have a control group and also a treatment group, which the control group doesn't have access to our product, and the treatment group were like, they sign up as volunteers to use the product. And guess what? The people who didn't use the product before, they were having less emotional challenge. But as the semester goes, once they face their finals, they're actually experiencing more emotional challenge. But the people who are having constant emotional intervention throughout the semester, at the end of the semester, they actually experience the less emotional challenge. And as opposite, people who actually have access to constant emotional intervention, they do experience more positive emotion regularly, such as calm and happy. And I feel like it sounds like an ad, but what I wanted to really share about what we learned from this experience is small, constant positive emotions, such as feeling calm, feeling grateful, feeling happy. It's actually the key for emotional well-being. The people who can feel happier, like even like small happiness in daily life, can have more um, can have much better motivation, and they might be able to uh, live a slightly better life once you have the power to proactively generate those positive emotions. So I think I saw some people was like, I'm curious how AI was used to get the current iteration of the app. Yes, so when we were designing the product, of course, because we wanted to make sure the things that we're designing, it's science backed. We actually run a lot of trial and also do a lot of like studies to make sure the product itself is beneficial and low risks. So we had, and then during this process, we actually developed this STAR framework, which is the core principle for us to design the AI system behind, as well as a principle which I think everyone will benefit if you can apply this in your daily life. The first thing is, it's science based. Like, I think AI can say a lot of things. It will say like, oh yeah, today's good, I'm happy for you. Today's bad, I'm so sorry. But the most important thing is, we wanted to make sure the content that we provide, or the content you received, it's truly science backed. A very powerful framework from the, we'll say like almost like the father of well-being from Martin Sellerberg, is this kind of like concept of flourish. In the Flourish book, is it talked about the 5 ingredients of human flourishing. So in order for people to feel happy and motivated in their daily life, there's 5 important things that you wanted to experience constantly in your daily life, which includes positive emotion. How often do you feel positive emotions such as happy, calm, motivated, grateful, and things like that? The frequency of positive emotion is very, very important. Even there is a powerful thing called the 1 to 3 ratio of positive emotion and emotional balance, which means that whenever you're experiencing a bad thing that made you feel sad or negative, experience negative emotion, you wanted to find 3 positive things to balance it out. And the positive thing doesn't have to be really huge, such as I got a new job. It can be something super small as I enjoyed coffee this morning. I read a book that inspired me. I saw a quote that inspired me. The small, even if they're small, the frequency of positive emotion will still play a huge part in your daily life that help you to actually it will show you from experiencing burnout or feeling sad and stuff like that. Second thing, E, engagement, which engagement means that how often do you feel like you get to dive into the flow states, which you enjoy something so much that you forgot the time passed. This can be related to your work and also can be related to your personal habits. Finding that thing that help you to get into that flow state where you help you to focus is also another important aspect of feeling fulfilled about your life. And the third thing is relationships. Believe or not, relationship is actually the most important aspect of your of your well-being. I didn't trust this when before I meet my co-founders because I'm an introvert person, even though I don't look like one. But later on, I realized that relationship doesn't mean that how many friends you have. It's actually how supportive you feel, fulfilling your. There's a new concept called emotionship, which is when you feel you wanted to feel support. Do you have people around you to support you? You feel like you're lost. Do you feel like someone can provide you with mentorships? And those things about relationship can come from strangers, your close friends, your family, your significant others. But the comprehensiveness of how fulfilled or how supported you feel from the society is also another important thing about your well-being. The fourth thing is meaning. This is quite straightforward. Basically, it's like, do you feel like there's certain thing in your life made you feel like this is meaningful and you enjoy this and you feel like your life has meaning because of that? It can be things like your family, the people you love. It can also be your career, like you love your career growth, and they also can be your habits. Like I love drawing, and even like I love my cat. Like that gives me a sense of meaning. All of those things contribute to your well-being. The important thing is keep reminding yourself about that. Don't forget about that. And then the last thing is achievement or accomplishment, which means that how often do you feel a sense of progress in your life? And it doesn't have to be huge. The key is you find awareness of those moments of accomplishment. And it could be yesterday I eat 3 bag of snacks, but I hate myself. And today, even though I only ate 2 bags, it's one less snack than yesterday. I made some progress. It can be small. The most important thing is we need to realize those moments of accomplishment and celebrate it, because oftentimes, especially in Korea, in Asian culture, I grew up in China, and my family is always like, okay, you accomplished this, now next thing. So you always look forward and you ignored the moment of accomplishment, and that oftentimes leads to less understanding of your accomplishment. So focusing on your moment of celebration is also important. And this is actually the top secret of well-being. I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I do want to make sure we have some time for QA. But now you heard our top secret. Remember PERMA system, and that remind yourself about the perma. Bringing awareness in your daily life about this system. Keep reminding yourself about all aspects in your daily life, and those things are so important. And I hope this can be like a helpful way for people to feel more motivated and more fulfilled in your daily life. So second thing is timely. Um, this is quite straightforward. It's all about the importance of timing. I've had experience where when I was at school, I got very stressed out because of my internship application, and it got to a point where it triggered my depression again. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to someone, and I went to the school counseling system, and they asked me like, do you have intention to harm yourself or suicide? And I was like, no. They'll be like, okay, the next appointment is in 2 months. So I booked that appointment. It didn't help. I still suffered so much. And after 2 months, the day before I get to my appointment, I got a phone call saying I got an internship at Google, and all the problem was gone. I had to cancel that appointment, which was not a good idea because later on other things triggered the depression because it was illness. It's not just emotions, and I had to take medications. But at that moment, I feel like I'm just fine. Like there's no problems. I'm doing so well. So making sure you get the support at the specific time, it's actually very important. um think about this, like if you are having a hard time sleeping because you're having running thought about things of your to do at this moment, you couldn't find people to talk about because it's 2 a.m, you don't want to bother anyone. Having things that or having ways to cope with that moment is important, because even if you get some support on the next day, you lost the sleep of that very specific day, and lack of sleep could also trigger additional stressor and make your second day feels worse. So getting the timely support at the right moment is also very important, and that's how like AI tools can be very helpful because it's always available over there, and you don't have to get into the wait list to get access to that second person's opinion or professional insight that could potentially help you to feel better at that moment. Another thing we actually heard from our user, which is very interesting, is one of our actually two. I heard two people actually told me this, is they put the app or whatever thing that makes you reminds you that you need to take care of your emotional well-being next to the things that they're addictive, because they learned that when they want to scroll TikTok, it's not because they love TikTok, it's because they're stressed. So when they see those things together, they realize that, oh, do I really need TikTok or do I just feel stressful? So instead of going to TikTok and spend hours, they might went to some other product, and in this case, is Flourish, got a mental massage and feels slightly better and get back to their life. So this kind of like moment of intervention, the decision that you make at that very specific moment, is actually also very important. That's why timely care is very important. And then also we wanted to make sure it's action oriented. I think I covered this in the previous talk conversation. It's not just about talking. We need to take actions, however small. If you feel like you're so stressed, maybe step outside for a few moments. Ease your nerve. If you feel like today is terrible, maybe try to find a small moment of joy. Pour yourself a nice cup of tea to enjoy that moment. Might be able to turn things around. So taking actions, no matter how small, is very important. And the key is actually well-being is not something that you well-being or happiness is not something you can just sit there and wait for it to happen. You actually have the power and the knowledge, or potentially you will learn the knowledge to know that it's actually a skill can be learned through different practices. Once you build a habit of taking care of yourself, things will eventually get much better. And also, you actually always have the power and the inner wisdom to make your life slightly better. I wouldn't guarantee you will always make your life so much better, but at least you have the power to turn a day around, and making sure you remember that taking actions to turn the day around is very important. And that's why I really believe that small actions can make big impact. Sometimes you might get overwhelmed, but maybe just take one small actions that your inner wisdom tells you is the right thing to do, and you might be able to turn a day around. The last thing is real life focused. We wanted to make sure that people connect with their real life, connect with real people, connect with the real communities. Um, I know we talk about AI tools. You can talk to ChatGPT about this. You can talk to Sunny about that, getting some timely support or insight to get better. But it's very important to remember the reason that AI is there is not because we want people to make friends with AI. That could potentially make people feel more isolated. What we want is AI to become this kind of companionship, your cheerleaders, the people, the system who can provide you with the small gentle nudge or emotional support that you need so that it can motivate you to focus back in your real life, to connect with real people, to feel really fulfilled, if you remember my PERMA model. And that is very, very, very important. It's not about staying online, it's about what happened in your real life. By the way, small things. That's also why we've been designing daily badges where, like, oh, if you had a good conversation with your friend, we reward you with a relationship badge. If you had a really fun laughter with your colleague, you might get a positive emotion badges. We wanted to make sure people understand that small moment of joy or small actions can go a long way. I really love my co-founder's talk is like, if you proactively create a small moment of joy, it's very small, very tiny, but as they travel through time and meet you in the future, when you think back of that, it might become a much larger joy or much more meaningful experience that you never expected. So remember, small actions can go a long way. Last, um, as we mentioned, the purpose of AI is making mental well-being more accessible and helping you to feel more motivated instantly, but it's not to replace human therapists. We wanted to make sure people get to prevent crisis, empower people to make sure that everyone has the tool to turn things around before it's too late. But I wanted to make sure that if you're actually experiencing severe depression, eating disorder, anxiety, bipolar depression, things like that, still like seek for human therapists. We've done a lot of research. I know there's product out there claim that they can do therapists that's helpful, but just based on our study, we don't think it should replace human therapists. It shouldn't be replacing human connections, making sure it's a tool to empower you, not a tool to replace any real human expertise. Okay, I'm gonna pause it here. 2 hour delay, 2 minutes delay, but I do want to make sure we get to go through some questions. So, any questions? Let me see. Okay. Question. Thank you for sharing those visual, so rightful summarized mental model. Any thought or list of AI-powered task management apps can optimize workflow, identify time waster, and suggest productivity strategies. Okay, sounds good. I'm not sure if everything was powered by AI at this moment. There are certain things I think are better with AI comparing to other things. Like for example, uh, we currently have implemented this Pomodoro timer within our app or breathing exercise within the app. However, if you just search for Pomodoro timer for getting small tasks done, it's actually very, very helpful where you can have a list of things and break things into small tasks and get things done. Um, I remember there was a few time tracking kind of product that you can also find that help you block certain app at certain time. That can also be helpful, but unfortunately, it's not also powered by AI. So far, the things that we find it was the most helpful in terms of AI tooling is you can talk with certain AI technology, either with Sunny. in our app or with ChatGPT even, is to help them, feed them the information, ask them to provide you new information, new aspect, or help you to identify things, or helping you to identify important things. That's something that I find that was most helpful, because it does helping you to get introduced to very specific insight that might that might help you to break out from like down spiral or tunnel vision or thinking like that. So next, any other questions? Okay, how can you avoid comparing yourself to others in a way that leads to negative thoughts? Very great question, because I do that all the time. I don't think it's avoidable in a way. It's part of human nature. Like where you want to, the comparison coming from, I think it comes from a good intention within your mind, where you want it to be better, and then you learn from other people as your role models, or people who you look up to, and then you started to, unfortunately, you will start to compare yourself with those people. But I think at those moments, keep reminding yourself, the things like when you're comparing is not the only thing to determine your own values. Okay, this is actually the time where AI can be very helpful. Just talk about, oh, I'm comparing this with that person. Now I feel worthless, or less worthy, or I feel like I'm not good enough comparing with my colleague. And the good AI will introduce a lot of nice concept about self-compassion. And also when you're comparing, you might be being too focused on that one thing you can see and ignore other things in your life. um, Basically it's like helping yourself to get new perspective, either from AI technology or from a friend, to talk yourself out of it. Getting a third perspective, it's going to be very, very helpful in those situations. Okay, anything else? Nice. What kind of prompts or tool did you use to get you to move forward in your design as you were iterating? This is another really great question. Something I'm so proud of is, there was a period of time where we don't have fundings, and we've somehow managed to use all kinds of things that we could leverage to build product without money or engineer. One of the most powerful tools is actually, have to say this, is actually any tool that allows you to customize AI prompting. ChatGPT is one. Poe, like POE, is another one. We haven't tried other like really outstanding tools, but I'm sure they also do the equal works. It's also, it's like you can try everything with like promptings. And the key is actually not the tool itself, is the experience of actually talking to people. Like when we started to iterate the product, we can get a lot of iterations, but without hearing the actual user who like tell us how they feel about those experiences, it's not going to be able to help you to move far. Like for example, we had this first version of AI where we're so proud of, and in the first session of our user interview, the person commented, "This sounds like my mom. Keep demanding me things, and it's not helping me." And that's why we learned, okay, it's not the prompt, it's the insight that will actually help you to get things better. Okay, next one. What were the primary considerations when integrating AI in the apps? How did you go about mapping the pattern and scenario for each situation? Yes, this is also a really nice question. How do we map the patterns and scenarios? This is actually a skill I learned when I was working at Google. We use this system called the CUGS, Critical User Journey, which is you talk about a very specific scenario, and then based on that specific scenario, you map the experience. And this is actually extremely helpful when you're building a startup, when everything is so vague. You definitely wanted to do a lot of features, but narrow it down to a very specific use case, and sometimes it can even be not so scalable, can be a really strong way to help you at least build something out. um, so that you can start to test with people. Sometimes if you consider too much, you might get into this kind of overthinking mode where you cannot build anything. So at a certain point, you have to think less, do more, and just like focus on one thing that you're solving for that small group of people, and then you will start to get new insight to move things faster and making things more comprehensive. And as I mentioned, when we're first building the AI tool, we actually started with something else. It's like the core principle is what we want to do is to make positive psychology more accessible for people, helping the world to be better and helping people to better access positive psychology. That was actually the primary consideration. Later on, we find AI is a helpful way, so that's why we turn to AI. And for AI, I think it's very important to make sure it's not harmful, no risk for people, and also it's actually providing real value for individuals. So that's how we made the decision. But again, like don't consider too much. Focusing on one thing, get one thing done, and then you will get much more insight to move forward. Okay. I don't know if we have more time or are we all done. Um, Yes, I would love to talk more. I see there's so many more like questions. So like if you're interested in trying out the product, you can scan the QR code. Again, like I'm so grateful for like people's being here, and I just love all the response and comments, and it's such a great experience. Thank you for being here with me. I hope this is a helpful session. I hope there's some value that you can bring home with or share with your friends with. And very nice to meet you all. And I hope we stay connected. Thank you.